They didn't just shove her, they threw her. Regina Lynch was airborne, trash rushing up to meet her, laughter exploding behind her as someone spat. "Die, you piece of shit." Asterisk. What they didn't know what made this moment a death sentence was that a man in a black suit had just stopped walking in the shadows, and he never forgets faces. If this story pulled you in, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. I've got another unforgettable story dropping tomorrow, and while you're here, jump into the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our community from all around the world. All right, let's get back into it. They lifted her like she weighed nothing. 3 sets of hands, rough and deliberate, fingers digging into her uniform as the alley floodlight buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows against the brick wall that made the narrow space feel like a cage. The new waitress didn't scream. She didn't plead. Her name tag said Regina Lynch, hired 2 weeks ago. The kind of woman who kept her head down and her shifts covered without complaint. To them, she looked like someone who wouldn't fight back. The one in the gray hoodie jaw clenched. Boots scuffed from years of street corners laughed as he adjusted his grip on her arm. The other 2 circled. One in a black jacket with a smirk that never reached his eyes. The other stockier with work boots that thudded against cracked pavement like a heartbeat. Their voices carried that particular edge of cruelty disguised as justice. "This is what happens," one muttered. "When you play hero." Regina's body tensed, instinctively bracing. Her eyes weren't squeezed shut in terror. They were open, tracking the movement, the distance, the angle. The air carried smells most people would register without understanding. Rotting produce, metal bins, something sharp and chemical from the restaurant dumpsters. She knew exactly where they were taking her. The tallest one, face half-shadowed under his hood, leaned close enough that she could smell cigarettes and cheap cologne. "You think you're brave?" His voice dropped lower. "You think stepping in for some random kid makes you special?" The dumpsters loomed ahead, industrial green metal, lids half open, garbage bags split and leaking, rust streaking down the sides like old blood. Inside that row of bins, the space was tight, sharp edges everywhere, and the fall would hurt in ways that wouldn't show up as criminal assault on a police report. "Should have minded your business," the one in the black jacket said, his grin visible even in the dim light. The stocky one added the words meant to finish her. "Die, you piece of shit." For a split second, gravity released her, hair flying backward, arms outstretched, the world tilting. Then impact garbage bags bursting, metal lids clattering, pain blooming across her shoulders and ribs like fire spreading. The sound echoed off the walls. Laughter erupted, harsh and satisfied. Any normal waitress would have stayed down. Any normal person would have curled up and waited for them to leave. Regina Lynch slowly pushed herself upright, hands braced against a torn trash bag, knees finding purchase on something solid beneath the filth. Her breathing came measured, controlled. She didn't wipe her face, didn't check her injuries. Her eyes lifted to meet theirs and held. The laughter faltered. Something in her refusal to break disrupted the expected outcome. 30 feet away, just beyond the cone of the floodlight, a man in a black suit stopped walking. His hand, which had been reaching for his car keys, went still. Andres Prieto's expression didn't change, sharp features carved from stone, dark eyes that had witnessed worse but never ignored it. He'd been heading to his vehicle after a business meeting, taking the back route he always took, the route most people avoided after dark. He saw the throw. He heard the threat. He registered the woman pulling herself from the trash with a spine that refused to bend. Inside the alley, one of them moved forward again, emboldened by her silence. The one in the gray hoodie stepped closer, his boot scraping against concrete as he prepared to kick a dumpster lid for emphasis. "What? You gonna cry now? Gonna tell us you learned your lesson?" Regina spoke for the first time, her voice low, steady, stripped of everything except fact. "You followed me out here because you couldn't stand that I made you look weak in front of a kid." The words landed like stones in water. The stocky one's smirk flickered. The one in the black jacket shifted his weight, suddenly uncertain. The one in the gray hoodie clenched his jaw tighter, anger flashing across his face like lightning before a storm. "You've got a mouth on you," he said, stepping forward. "Let's see if..." Behind them, Andres Prieto began walking forward. His footsteps were deliberate, unhurried, the kind of approach that meant someone had already made a decision. The sound of expensive shoes on pavement cut through the tension like a blade. All 3 men turned. Andres stopped 10 feet away, hands loose at his sides, posture relaxed but somehow more threatening because of it. The floodlight caught the sharp lines of his suit, tailored, immaculate, completely out of place in an alley that smelled like rot and violence. His face remained neutral, but his eyes moved between the three men with the kind of assessment that made grown men remember every mistake they'd ever made. "Gentlemen," he said quietly. Not a greeting, an acknowledgement that he'd seen everything. The one in the gray hoodie recovered first, forcing false confidence into his voice. "This doesn't concern you, man. Just walk away." Andres tilted his head slightly. "That's interesting advice." His gaze shifted to Regina, still standing in the garbage, blood on her lip, uniform torn. "You all right?" Regina straightened further, ignoring the pain screaming through her ribs. "I'm fine." "You're not," Andres said simply. Then his attention returned to the three men. "But you will be." The temperature in the alley seemed to drop. The one in the black jacket laughed nervously. "Look, we were just teaching her a lesson about..." "About what?" Andres interrupted, his voice still quiet, still controlled. "About minding her business? About not interfering when three grown men corner a teenager?" He took one step forward. "Or were you teaching her that cowards only fight when the numbers are on their side?" The stocky one's hands curled into fists. "You need to back off before..." "Before what?" Andres asked. "Before you throw me in the trash too?" Silence. The one in the gray hoodie seemed to actually look at Andres for the first time, really look. Something in the man's bearing, in the ink that traced up his neck just above the collar, in the way he stood like violence was a language he spoke fluently, but chose not to translate. Recognition flickered across the bully's face, then fear. "We were just leaving," he said quickly. "No," Andres said. "You weren't." He glanced at Regina again. "She was leaving. You three are staying right here until we have a conversation about consequences." The word hung in the air like smoke. Regina pulled herself fully from the dumpster. Every movement deliberate despite the pain. She walked forward slowly, passing the three men who had thrown her, passing Andres, who watched her with something like curiosity, heading toward the mouth of the alley where the streetlight promised safety. She stopped just before reaching it, turning back one last time. "Thank you," she said to Andres. He nodded once. "Go clean up. This won't take long." As Regina disappeared into the night, the three men realized with sudden, crystalline clarity that they had made a mistake. Not in throwing a waitress into garbage, in doing it where Andres Prieto could see. It had started 20 minutes earlier, when Regina was supposed to be finishing her shift in peace. The diner was nearly empty. Just her, the cook cleaning the grill and back, and two regulars nursing coffee at the counter who'd been there so long they'd become part of the furniture. Regina moved through her closing routine on autopilot, wiping down tables, refilling salt shakers, counting tips that barely covered bus fare home. Her feet ached. Her back ached. Everything ached in that specific way that comes from standing for 8 hours straight, smiling at people who didn't see you, pretending their rudeness didn't land. She'd been counting down the minutes until she could step outside, breathe air that didn't smell like fryer grease, and walk the 6 blocks to her apartment where nobody expected anything from her. Then she heard it. Laughter. The wrong kind. The kind that had edges. Regina paused, dish rag in hand, listening. The sound came from outside, somewhere near the front of the building. Male voices. Multiple. And underneath them, a higher pitch. Younger. Scared. She told herself it wasn't her problem. She'd learned that lesson years ago. The world didn't reward people who stepped into other people's fights. It punished them. It made them targets. But her feet were already moving toward the door. The cook called out something about taking the trash when she went. But Regina was already pushing through the entrance, the bell above the door chiming cheerfully like nothing was wrong. The street was dark except for the flickering streetlight 20 yards away. The diner's neon sign cast everything in shades of red and shadow. And there, just beyond the pool of light, 3 men had someone cornered. A boy. Couldn't have been more than 16. Tall but skinny in the way teenagers get when they grow too fast. All angles and awkward limbs. He wore a jacket 2 sizes too big, hood pulled up, hands shoved deep in pockets. His eyes darted left, right, searching for an escape route that didn't exist. The 3 men had him boxed in. One leaned against a parked car, arms crossed, smirking. Another stood directly in the boy's path, close enough to be threatening without actually touching. The third circled slowly, like a shark testing the water. "Come on," one of them said, voice dripping with false friendliness. "We just want to talk." "About what you saw," another added. The boy's voice came out thin, shaking. "I didn't see anything. I swear, You just what?" The one in the gray hoodie stepped closer. "Just happened to be standing right there when the cops showed up? Just happened to be looking the other direction? I wasn't looking at anything. I was just walking home from From where? The stocky one cut him off. You don't live around here. Regina's hand tightened on the door frame. Every instinct screamed at her to go back inside, lock the door, let someone else handle it. This wasn't a mugging. This was something else, something planned. The boy's eyes caught hers across the distance. For just a second, a silent plea, she stepped forward. Hey! The word came out before she'd fully decided to say it, before she'd calculated the cost, before fear could stop her. All three men turned. The boy's head snapped up, hope and terror mixing on his face. Regina walked closer, keeping her steps measured, unthreatening. He bothering you guys? The one in the black jacket laughed, but it had a sharp edge. What? The kid, Regina said, gesturing. Is he bothering you? Because if not, maybe you could let him get home. The one in the gray hoodie, the leader, Regina realized studied her with eyes that had gone flat and calculating. This doesn't concern you. Probably not, Regina agreed. Her voice stayed level, almost conversational. But he's a kid. And there's 3 of you. Doesn't really seem fair. Fair? The stocky one barked a laugh. You hear that? She's worried about fair. The boy was already moving, sensing the shift. He slipped sideways, putting distance between himself and the men, edging toward Regina like she was a shield. Back off, Regina said quietly. Not a shout, not aggressive, just a boundary drawn in the dirt. He's leaving now. The one in the gray hoodie's expression changed. The calculation hardened into something colder. You his mother? No. His sister? Girlfriend? You know this little shit? No, Regina said again. But you're done. For a moment, nobody moved. The boy took his chance. He bolted, sneakers slapping pavement, hood flying back, arms pumping as he ran down the street, and disappeared around the corner without looking back. The silence that followed felt heavy, dangerous. The one in the black jacket took a step toward Regina. You just made a real stupid mistake. Regina's heart hammered, but she kept her face neutral. He's gone. Whatever issue you had with him, it's over. No, the one in the gray hoodie said slowly. Now our issue is with you. The stocky one cracked his knuckles deliberately. Sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. Regina felt the cold math settling in her stomach. 3 against 1. No witnesses. The street empty except for them. The cook inside the diner wouldn't hear anything unless she screamed, and screaming would just make them angrier. I'm going back inside now, she said. Sure you are. The one in the gray hoodie smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. After we have a little conversation. They didn't move to stop her as she turned. That should have been a relief. Instead, it made her skin crawl. She walked back into the diner, locked the door behind her, exhaled the breath she'd been holding. The cook looked up from the grill, eyebrows raised in question. Everything okay? Yeah, Regina lied. Just some kids being loud. She finished her closing duties mechanically, mind elsewhere, calculating. The 3 men knew where she worked now. They'd seen her face. They weren't the type to let public humiliation slide, especially not from a waitress who made them back down in front of their target. 45 minutes later, she clocked out, grabbed her jacket, said goodnight to the cook, stepped out the back door into the alley because it was closer to the street she needed. The floodlight was already on, buzzing like a warning she didn't hear, and the 3 men were waiting. Andres Prieto had learned long ago that the most important decisions were made in silence. He stood now in that silence, watching 3 men shift their weight like animals, realizing they'd cornered something more dangerous than expected. The alley felt smaller with him in it. The floodlight buzzed overhead, casting his shadow long across the pavement, and somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed too far away to matter, too close to ignore. The woman Regina, her name tag had said, was gone. Smart. She'd understood the unspoken offer. Leave now while you can still walk away clean. Some people didn't recognize mercy when it was offered. She had. Look, man, the one in the gray hoodie started, voice climbing half an octave toward reason. We didn't know she was. We weren't trying to. Stop. Andres' voice cut through the explanation like a blade through silk. Quiet. Absolute. Don't insult both of us by pretending you're sorry. The 3 men exchanged glances. The stocky one's hands were still curled into fists. The one in the black jacket had taken a step backward without seeming to realize it. The one in the gray hoodie, the leader, was doing calculations behind his eyes. Fight or flight. Pride or survival. Andres had seen this dance 1,000 times. He already knew how it would end. We should go, the one in the black jacket said, voice tight. Yes, Andres agreed. You should, but not yet. He'd come to this part of the city for a meeting. Routine business, the kind that required his physical presence, his signature, his eyes confirming what contracts couldn't guarantee. The restaurant had been 2 blocks over, expensive and discreet, the kind of place where conversations happened in undertones and everyone understood that some things were never said aloud. The meeting had gone well. Papers signed, agreements reached, hands shaken with the appropriate pressure that communicated respect without submission. He'd been walking to his car, parked deliberately away from the restaurant's valet service, because Andres preferred to control his own exits, when he'd heard it. Not the shout, not even the impact, the laughter, the specific kind of laughter that came from men who believed they were untouchable, who'd grown comfortable with cruelty, who'd never faced real consequences and didn't expect to start tonight. Andres had almost kept walking. Should have kept walking. His evening was finished. His obligations met. Whatever was happening in that alley was technically none of his concern. But then he'd seen her, the waitress, being lifted like garbage toward the dumpsters. Seen her face. Not screaming, not begging, just calculating. Seen the way she braced for impact like someone who'd learned to absorb violence and keep moving. And he'd heard the words, "Die, you piece of shit." That's when Andres Prieto stopped walking. Not out of nobility, not out of some misguided sense of heroism, but because he recognized something in that moment that most people missed. The woman had made a choice. She'd stepped between predators and prey, knowing the cost, accepting it anyway. That kind of choice interested him. More than that, it reminded him of something. Someone, a version of himself from years ago, before the weight of power had taught him to measure every action against its consequences. "What's your name?" Andres asked the one in the gray hoodie. The man's jaw clenched. "Why? Because I want to know who I'm talking to." Andres's tone didn't change. Still quiet. Still controlled. "I'm going to find out anyway. You can make this easier or harder. Choice is yours." The stocky one spoke up, emboldened by desperation. "We don't have to tell you shit." Andres turned his attention fully to the speaker. Really looked at him. The man was shorter than his friends, built thick through the shoulders and chest, work boots suggesting construction or warehouse labor. Tattoo visible on his neck, amateur work. Prison ink, maybe. Eyes that had seen violence but never learned to recognize when they were outmatched. "You're right," Andres said. "You don't have to tell me anything." He pulled his phone from his jacket pocket with deliberate slowness. "I can make a call instead. Have someone look up 3 men matching your descriptions, caught on the diner's security camera 20 minutes ago harassing a minor. Then I'll have them check for outstanding warrants, unpaid tickets, parole violations." He let the sentence hang. The one in the black jacket's face had gone pale. "We weren't. There's no camera." "There's always a camera," Andres said. It might even be true. Most businesses had them now, cheap security systems recording everything to cloud storage. Whether this particular diner had one or not didn't matter. The threat was enough. The one in the gray hoodie finally spoke, defeat flattening his voice. Travis Morrison. "And them?" "Jeff, Kyle." No last names offered for the others. Andres didn't push. He had what he needed, a name to attach to a face, something to trace back if necessary. "Here's what's going to happen," Andres said, pocketing his phone. "You're going to leave this neighborhood. Tonight. Right now. You're going to forget you ever saw that woman. You're going to forget you ever touched her." Travis Morrison's eyes narrowed. "And if we don't?" Andres smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "Then I'll remember you instead." The words landed with the weight of prophecy. "Jeff," the stocky one broke first. He took 2 steps backward, then 3, then turned and started walking, not running. Walking with forced casualness, like he'd decided to leave on his own terms. Kyle in the black jacket followed seconds later, hands shoved in pockets, shoulders hunched. Travis Morrison stayed. Pride or stupidity, or some mixture of both keeping him rooted to the pavement. "This isn't over," he said. Andres studied him with something approaching pity. "Yes," he said quietly. "It is. You just don't know it yet." He turned and walked away, footsteps echoing off brick walls. Behind him, Travis Morrison finally moved, following his friends toward whatever came next. Andres reached his car, a black sedan, expensive but understated, and paused with his hand on the door. His reflection stared back from the tinted window. Sharp suit, cold eyes, face that revealed nothing. He'd meant what he said. The encounter was over. But the woman who'd stood in garbage with blood on her lip and steel in her spine? Regina Lynch. She interested him, and Andres Prieto always followed his interests to their conclusion. Regina made it 3 blocks before her legs started shaking. Not from fear, though fear was there, coiling cold in her stomach. Not from pain, though her ribs screamed with every breath and her shoulder throbbed where it had hit metal. The shaking came from adrenaline finally catching up, her body processing what her mind had refused to acknowledge in the moment. She'd almost died tonight. She stopped under a streetlight, leaning against a brick wall, forcing her breathing to steady. In through the nose, out through the mouth, count to 4. The technique came back automatically. Muscle memory from a life she'd worked hard to leave behind. Her uniform was ruined. Stains she couldn't identify in the dark. A tear across the sleeve, the smell of garbage clinging to every fiber. Her hair had come loose from its ponytail, hanging in tangles around her face. When she touched her lip, her fingers came away sticky with blood. She should go to the hospital, get checked out, file a report. She wouldn't do any of those things. Regina pushed off the wall and kept walking, each step taking her farther from the diner, from the alley, from the man in the expensive suit, who'd appeared like something out of a different world entirely. She didn't know who he was, didn't want to know. Men who moved like that, who spoke with that kind of quiet authority, who made 3 attackers back down with just their presence. Those men came with complications she couldn't afford. Her apartment was dark when she finally climbed the 3 flights of stairs, fumbling with keys that suddenly felt too heavy in her hands. Inside, she didn't turn on the lights, just locked the door, threw the deadbolt, and stood in the darkness listening to her own heartbeat gradually slow. The shower ran hot enough to hurt. Regina stood under the spray until the water turned cold, watching brown water circle the drain, scrubbing at her skin like she could wash away the memory of hands grabbing her, lifting her, throwing her like she was nothing. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel that had seen better days, she caught her reflection in the fogged mirror. The woman staring back looked tired, older than 28. There was a bruise blooming across her shoulder, purple-black against pale skin. Her lip was split. A scrape ran along her forearm where something sharp had caught her. But her eyes were steady. That's what mattered. Regina, dressed in clean clothes, moved to the kitchen window and looked down at the street below. Empty. Quiet. No gray hoodies. No watching figures. Just the normal darkness of a city neighborhood after midnight. She should feel safe now. She didn't, because men like Travis Morrison didn't forget humiliation. They nursed it, fed it, let it grow into something uglier. And the man in the suit, Andres, she'd heard one of them say his name, he'd let them walk away, which meant they were still out there, still angry, still dangerous. Regina pulled her phone from her purse, stared at the dark screen. She could call someone, should call someone, but who? She had no family in the city, no close friends, just co-workers who knew her as the quiet new hire who never caused trouble, until tonight. Her thumb hovered over the emergency call button, then dropped. What would she even say? 3 men threw me in the trash, but another man scared them away, and now I'm home and nothing actually happened except I can't stop shaking? The police would take a report. Maybe. Probably tell her there was nothing they could do without evidence, without witnesses, without proof that the men intended serious harm. They'd ask why she'd intervened in the first place, suggest she'd escalated the situation, imply that somehow this was her fault for not minding her business. Regina had heard those questions before, in a different city, a different life. She'd learned then that the system protected itself, not the people who needed protection. She set the phone down. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she felt herself falling again, felt gravity release her, felt the impact that rattled through her bones. So she sat in the darkness, knees pulled to her chest, watching the window like something might crawl through it. At some point, exhaustion won. She dozed fitfully, waking at every sound pipe settling, neighbors moving, the building breathing around her like a living thing. When dawn finally broke, pale and gray through the curtains, Regina felt like she'd been awake for days. Her phone buzzed. A text from the diner manager. "You okay? Cook said you left looking rough last night." Regina typed back. "Fine. Just tired. See you tomorrow." Another buzz. "Take today off if you need." She stared at the message. Taking a day off meant losing money she couldn't afford to lose, meant sitting alone in this apartment with nothing but her thoughts and the memory of laughter echoing in an alley. "I'll be there," she typed, then deleted it, then typed it again and hit send before she could change her mind. Work meant routine. Routine meant normal. Normal meant survival. The day passed in a blur of mundane tasks that felt surreal after the violence of the previous night. Regina moved through her shift mechanically, taking orders, delivering food, smiling at customers who didn't notice the bruise she'd covered with makeup or the way she flinched every time someone moved too quickly in her peripheral vision. The cook asked once if she was all right. She said yes. He didn't push. By evening, when the dinner rush finally slowed, Regina found herself standing at the front window, looking out at the street where she'd first seen the boy. The streetlight flickered. The same neon sign cast the same red glow, like nothing had changed, but everything had changed. She'd crossed a line last night, stepped between cruelty and fear, made herself visible, made herself a target, and now she had to live with the consequences of that choice, whatever they turned out to be. The door chimed. Regina turned automatically, server's smile already forming. A man in a black suit stood in the entrance. Not Andres Prieto, someone else, younger, neat haircut, expensive watch. He looked around the diner with the kind of assessment that said he didn't belong here, knew it, and didn't care. His eyes found Regina. Regina Lynch? Her blood went cold. Who's asking? The man reached into his jacket slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a business card. Plain white, just a phone number embossed in black. Mr. Prieto would like to speak with you, he said. When you're ready. He set the card on the nearest table and walked out without waiting for a response. Regina stared at the card like it might explode. The conversation, apparently, wasn't over. Regina stared at the business card for 3 days before she called the number. 3 days of looking over her shoulder every time she left her apartment. 3 days of jumping at shadows, checking locks twice, sleeping with a kitchen knife under her pillow. 3 days of telling herself she was fine, while her hands shook every time someone walked too close behind her on the street. On the 4th morning, she picked up the card from where it sat on her kitchen counter, moved a dozen times but never thrown away, and dialed. 1 ring. 2. Miss Lynch. The voice was smooth, professional. Not Andres Prieto. Someone else. Mr. Prieto will meet you at Rossi's. Tonight. 8 o'clock. A table is already reserved. I didn't say I would. He'll be waiting. The line went dead. Regina stood in her kitchen, phone still pressed to her ear, anger and fear warring in her chest. She should throw the card away, block the number, pretend none of this ever happened. Instead, at 7:45 that evening, she found herself standing outside Rossi's, an Italian restaurant in a part of town where the buildings were renovated instead of crumbling, where streetlights actually worked, where people paid for valet parking. She didn't belong here. Her best clothes, black pants, and a simple blouse felt shabby compared to the elegant figures moving past her through the entrance. But she pushed the door open anyway, propelled by something she couldn't quite name. Curiosity, defiance. The need to understand what kind of man could make 3 attackers disappear with just his presence. The hostess looked up with a practiced smile that faltered slightly when she saw Regina. Do you have a reservation? I'm meeting someone. Prieto. The smile transformed into something genuine. Respectful. Of course. Right this way. The restaurant was dimly lit, intimate, the kind of place where conversations happened in low tones over wine that cost more than Regina made in a week. The hostess led her through the main dining room to a private section in back, separated by frosted glass panels that turned the other diners into shadows and suggestion. Andres Prieto sat at a table in the corner, positioned so his back was to the wall and he could see both entrances. He wore another expensive suit charcoal this time, and he was alone. No bodyguards, no associates, just him and a glass of red wine he hadn't touched. He stood when he saw her. Old-fashioned courtesy that felt both genuine and calculated. Miss Lynch, thank you for coming. I didn't have much choice, did I? Regina remained standing, keeping the table between them. Your guy didn't exactly make it sound optional. Everything is optional. Andres gestured to the chair across from him, including staying. But I hoped you'd at least hear me out. Regina didn't sit. What do you want? To talk. To make sure you're all right. His eyes traveled over her face, noting the fading bruise she'd tried to cover, the way she held herself slightly stiff on her left side where her ribs were still tender, and to apologize. That caught her off guard. For what? For letting them walk away that night. Silence settled between them, heavy with implication. Regina finally sat, not because she'd been invited, but because her legs were suddenly tired of holding her upright. What happened to them? Does it matter? Yes. Andres studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly, like she'd passed some kind of test. Travis Morrison was arrested 2 days ago. Outstanding warrant. He'll be in county lockup for at least 6 months, possibly longer if certain other charges come to light. And the other two? Jeff Harmon left the city. Decided he preferred opportunities elsewhere. Kyle Beck. Andres paused, choosing his words carefully. Kyle Beck is reconsidering his life choices. Somewhere quiet where he has time to think. Regina's hands clenched in her lap. You did that. I made phone calls, asked questions, reminded people of facts they'd conveniently forgotten. He finally picked up his wine glass, took a small sip. I didn't manufacture crimes, Miss Lynch. I just ensured existing consequences finally caught up. Why? The question came out harder than she intended. You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. No, Andres agreed. But you stepped between 3 men and a frightened boy. You didn't have to. You gained nothing from it. And when they threw you in the garbage for it, you stood back up. He set down his glass. That interested me. I'm not interesting. I'm a waitress who made a stupid decision. It wasn't stupid. His voice carried absolute certainty. It was brave. There's a difference. Regina felt something crack inside her chest. She'd spent 3 days telling herself she'd been reckless, foolish, that she'd invited violence through her own actions. Hearing someone, especially someone like him, call it brave, felt like permission to stop punishing herself. The boy, she said quietly. Is he okay? Yes, safe. He won't be bothered again. How do you know? Andres's expression didn't change. Because I told the people who sent those men that the boy is under protection now. Mine. The weight of that statement settled over the table like fog. Regina should have been frightened, should have recognized the implicit admission that Andres Prieto was exactly the kind of man she'd suspected, someone with power, connections, the ability to make people disappear. But instead, she felt something else. Relief. The boy was safe. The men who'd hurt her were facing consequences. Justice had been served, even if it came from outside the system. I don't understand what you want from me, she said finally. Nothing. Andres leaned back in his chair. I wanted to make sure you were safe, to offer you this. He slid something across the table. An envelope. The diner's owner is a friend. You've been given 2 weeks paid leave to recover. Use it however you need. Regina stared at the envelope without touching it. I don't need charity. It's not charity. It's respect. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket. You made a choice that night, Miss Lynch. A choice most people wouldn't make. That deserves recognition. He started to walk away, then paused, turned back. If you ever need anything, if those men come back, if you're in trouble, call that number. Day or night, someone will answer. Why would you do that? Andres Prieto smiled. It was slight, genuine, touched with something that might have been admiration. Because courage is rare, he said, and worth protecting. Then he was gone, disappearing through the frosted glass like a shadow, leaving Regina alone with an envelope she hadn't asked for and questions she couldn't answer. Regina didn't open the envelope until she got home. 2 weeks paid leave. The note was handwritten on expensive stationery, signed by the diner's owner with an apology for the incident and assurance that her position would be waiting when she returned. No questions asked, no explanations required. She set it on the counter next to the business card she still hadn't thrown away. The apartment felt different now. Not safer exactly, but less suffocating. Like someone had opened a window she didn't know was closed. She made tea she didn't drink, sat on her secondhand couch, and tried to understand what had just happened. Andres Prieto hadn't asked for anything, hadn't made threats disguised as favors, hadn't implied she owed him. He'd simply ensured consequences real, tangible consequences fell on the men who'd hurt her, then walked away like it was the most natural thing in the world. Regina didn't trust it, couldn't afford to. Men with that kind of power always wanted something eventually. The bill always came due. But for now, tonight, she let herself feel something she hadn't felt in years. Protected. Travis Morrison learned about consequences in a holding cell that smelled like industrial cleaner in desperation. The arrest had been clean, efficient. 2 officers showing up at his apartment at 6 a.m. with a warrant for unpaid child support dating back 3 years. Turned out his ex-wife had finally filed the paperwork he'd assumed she'd never actually submit. $12,000, the booking officer said, not unkindly. You can make bail if someone posts it. Travis had called everyone he knew. His brother, his drinking buddies, even Kyle, though that call went straight to voicemail. Nobody answered, nobody came. By day 3, sitting on a concrete bench with his back against cold cinder blocks, Travis started to understand. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't bad luck. Someone had pulled strings, made calls, ensured that every person who might have helped him suddenly had reasons not to. He remembered the man in the alley, the suit, the quiet voice, the way he'd said, "I'll remember you instead," like it was a promise carved in stone. Travis Morrison had never believed in karma. Now he was living in it. The public defender assigned to his case was overworked and underpaid, carrying a briefcase stuffed with files for 30 other clients she'd never have time to properly represent. "Best I can do is plead it down," she said during their 5-minute consultation. "Maybe get you released in 4 months instead of 6 if you behave." "What about the other charges?" Travis asked. Because there were other charges now. Assault allegations from 2 years ago that had mysteriously resurfaced. Witness statements that hadn't existed before suddenly appearing in official reports. The defender looked at him with something like pity. "Were you a good person back then, Mr. Morrison?" Travis didn't answer. "Then maybe this is just everything catching up at once." Jeff Harmon made it as far as Nevada before his truck broke down outside a town whose name he'd already forgotten. He'd left the city with $300 and a duffel bag stuffed with clothes, not bothering to tell his landlord or his employer or the woman he'd been seeing casually for 2 months. Just gone. Disappeared in the night like smoke. The truck, 15 years old, held together with duct tape and optimism, had given up outside a gas station where the heat shimmered off the asphalt in waves and everything smelled like diesel and sage. The mechanic quoted him $800. Jeff had $200 left. "I can give you $250, the mechanic said, eyeing the truck. "For parts. But that's it." Jeff stood in the parking lot, sweat soaking through his shirt, watching vultures circle something dead in the distance. He'd run because running seemed smarter than staying. Because the man in the alley, Prieto, he'd learned from some careful asking around before he left, wasn't someone you crossed and lived comfortably, but running had its own cost. No job, no home, no plan beyond anywhere but there. He bought a bus ticket with the money from selling the truck, headed east. Didn't matter where, just away. On the bus, wedged between a sleeping college student and a woman with a crying baby, Jeff closed his eyes and saw the waitress, Regina, standing in the garbage, looking at them like they were less than nothing. He'd laughed when Travis threw her. Thought it was funny. Thought she deserved it for interfering. Now, broke and homeless and running toward nothing, Jeff wondered if maybe she'd been braver than all 3 of them combined. Kyle Beck lasted exactly 1 week before someone knocked on his apartment door at 2 in the morning. He answered it half asleep, expecting a neighbor complaining about noise or maybe his girlfriend coming back after their latest fight. Instead, 2 men in suits stood in the hallway. Not police. Something else. "Mr. Beck, we need you to come with us." Kyle's blood went ice cold. "Who are you? Friends of someone you disrespected?" They didn't touch him, didn't threaten, just stood there with the kind of patient stillness that said refusal wasn't an option being offered. Kyle grabbed his jacket. They drove him in silence to a warehouse district he didn't recognize, pulled into a loading bay where the only light came from a single bulb hanging from a chain. Andres Prieto was waiting. He sat on a metal folding chair like it was a throne, wearing another immaculate suit, looking at Kyle the way someone might examine an insect under glass. "Sit," Andres said, gesturing to a chair placed 10 feet away. Kyle sat. His hands were shaking. "Do you know why you're here?" Kyle's mouth was too dry to answer. "Because I want you to understand something." Andres leaned forward slightly. "The woman you threw in the garbage, Regina Lynch, she made a choice that night. She chose to protect someone weaker. You made a different choice. You chose cruelty. We were just, don't." The word cracked like a whip. "Don't minimize it. Don't excuse it. You told her to die. You laughed while she pulled herself from filth. You celebrated her pain." Kyle felt tears burning behind his eyes. "I'm sorry. I swear to God, I'm sorry isn't enough." Andre stood. "But it's a start. You're going to disappear for a while, Mr. Beck. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere you can think about the man you've become and decide if that's who you want to be. Where? That's not your concern." Andres nodded to the men who'd brought Kyle. "They'll explain the arrangement. You'll work. You'll earn your keep. And maybe, if you learn something, you'll come back different." Kyle was crying now. "Please, courage," Andres said, "is choosing to do the right thing when it costs you something. You 3 chose cowardice. Now you pay the price." Regina woke on the 5th morning of her unexpected leave and realized she'd slept through the night without nightmares. The realization came slowly, like surfacing from deep water. No dreams of falling. No phantom sensations of hands grabbing her. No jerking awake at 3 a.m. with her heart hammering and her sheets soaked in sweat. Just sleep, deep and dreamless and whole. She lay in bed watching early light filter through the curtains, listening to the city wake up around her cars starting, someone's alarm blaring through thin walls, the couple upstairs arguing in Spanish about something that sounded important but probably wasn't. Normal sounds. Normal morning. Like the world had decided she was allowed to be ordinary again. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from an unknown number. The coffee shop on 5th and Maple. 10 a.m. If you're interested. No signature. No explanation. Regina stared at the message, recognizing the presumption in it. Whoever sent it assumed she'd know who it was from. Assumed she'd come. Assumed they had the right to summon her like this. She should delete it. Block the number. Use these 2 weeks to find a new job in a different neighborhood where nobody knew about the alley, or the men, or the dangerous stranger in the expensive suit. At 9:45, she was getting dressed. At 9:55, she was walking into a coffee shop she'd never been to before, scanning the tables for a face she'd only seen twice but somehow couldn't forget. Andres Prieto sat near the back, away from the windows, positioned so he could see everyone who entered. He wore casual clothes today, dark jeans, a black sweater, leather jacket draped over the chair beside him. Without the suit, he looked younger, more human, though his eyes carried the same weight they'd had in the alley. He stood when he saw her, always with the old-fashioned courtesy that felt both genuine and like armor. You came. I shouldn't have. Regina remained standing, hands in her jacket pockets. I should have blocked that number. But you didn't. He gestured to the chair across from him. Coffee? They make a decent cappuccino here. Regina sat because standing felt like admitting she was afraid. Why am I here? Andres settled back into his chair, studying her with that same careful assessment she remembered from the restaurant. Because I have a proposition, and because I think you deserve to hear it. I don't want your money. Good. Because I'm not offering any. He paused as a barista brought over 2 coffees he'd already ordered for her. She realized, which should have annoyed her but somehow didn't. I'm offering a job. Regina wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the warmth seep into her palms. I have a job. You have a job that pays barely above minimum wage, where you stand for 8 hours serving people who don't see you, going home to an apartment with locks that wouldn't stop a determined teenager. His voice was matter of fact, not cruel, just stating realities she'd tried not to think about. I'm offering something different. I'm not interested in whatever business you... It's legitimate, Andres interrupted quietly. Security consulting. I own several properties, restaurants, office buildings, residential complexes. They need someone to assess vulnerabilities, recommend improvements, coordinate with contractors. Someone observant. Someone who understands how predators think. Regina's throat felt tight. You don't know anything about me. I know you recognized danger before it touched you. I know you calculated exits and distances while being thrown into garbage. I know you pulled yourself up when most people would have stayed down. He took a sip of his coffee. And I know you're trained. Military or law enforcement. The way you moved, the way you scanned the alley, that's not instinct. That's education. She should have lied, should have deflected. Instead, the truth came out quiet and heavy. Military police. 6 years. Honorable discharge. Andres nodded like she'd confirmed something he'd already suspected. And now you're serving coffee because nobody hires women with gaps in their employment history and no recent references. I don't talk about why I left. You don't have to. He set down his cup. I'm not asking for your trauma, Miss Lynch. I'm asking if you want to use your skills for something that pays $40 an hour instead of $12. The number hit her like a physical blow. $40 an hour. That was rent paid without panic. That was groceries without calculating every item. That was breathing room she hadn't had in 3 years. Why me? Regina asked. You could hire anyone. Someone with current credentials. Someone without. She gestured vaguely at herself. Baggage. Because baggage means you understand what it costs to make hard choices. And because when you saw that boy being cornered, you didn't calculate the cost first. You just moved. Andres leaned forward slightly. That's rare, Miss Lynch. Rarer than credentials. Regina looked down at her coffee, watching steam curl upward like ghosts. This was too easy, too convenient. Men like Andres Prieto didn't offer salvation without strings attached. What do you really want? She asked. Honestly? He considered the question with visible sincerity. I want someone around me who chooses to do the right thing, even when it's stupid. Someone who won't ignore violence because it's not their problem. Someone who, he paused, choosing words carefully, reminds me why certain things matter. That's not a reason to hire someone. It's the only reason that matters. Andres pulled a folder from the messenger bag beside his chair and slid it across the table. Job description, starting salary, benefits, no contract. You can quit any time, no questions asked. Read it, think about it, call that number if you're interested. Regina opened the folder. Everything was there, printed on official letterhead, detailed and specific, exactly as legitimate as he'd claimed. Security consulting for Prieto Property Management, $40 an hour, health insurance, 2 weeks paid vacation. It looked real. It looked safe, which meant it probably wasn't. I need time, she said. Take all you need. Andres stood, pulling on his leather jacket. But Miss Lynch? Whatever happened before that made you leave the military, made you hide in a diner, made you think you didn't deserve better. You were wrong. You deserve at least the chance to decide who you want to be next. He left before she could respond, disappearing into the morning crowd on the sidewalk. Regina sat alone with the folder and her coffee, and the uncomfortable feeling that someone had just seen her more clearly than she'd seen herself in years. Her phone buzzed. Another text from the same unknown number. The offer stands regardless. You're not obligated, but you're also not forgotten. Regina looked at the folder again, at the number printed on the business card clipped to the first page, at the possibility of a life that wasn't just survival. She finished her coffee slowly, thinking. Regina took the job. Not immediately. She made herself wait the full 2 weeks, using the time to research Prieto Property Management, to verify the business was real, to drive past the address listed on the letterhead and confirm it wasn't some front operation run out of a warehouse. Everything checked out. The business was legitimate, 15 years established, owned properties across 3 states, employed 42 people with benefits and retirement plans. Reviews online were professional, unremarkable in the way real businesses were unremarkable, which made it more terrifying somehow. Because if Andres Prieto was legitimate, then accepting his offer meant stepping into a life she'd told herself she didn't deserve anymore. On the morning her leave ended, Regina called the number. The same smooth voice from before answered. Miss Lynch, we've been expecting you. I'll take the job, she said before she could change her mind. When do I start? Monday, 9 a.m. The address is in the folder. That gave her 3 days to second-guess everything. She spent them cleaning her apartment, organizing the closet she'd been ignoring for months, throwing away clothes that didn't fit and memories she'd been carrying like stones in her pockets. Physical purging, making space for whatever came next. Saturday afternoon, her phone rang. Unknown number, different from before. She almost didn't answer. Hello? Regina Lynch? A woman's voice. Young. Nervous. I'm sorry to bother you. I got your number from... Someone said you might. I don't know how to... Slow down, Regina said, sitting on her couch. Who is this? My name is Jennifer Morrison. I'm Travis Morrison's sister. A pause. The man who... From the alley. Regina's blood went cold. How did you get this number? A man gave it to me. He said. You might understand. That you might listen. The woman's voice cracked. My brother's in jail, and I know what he did was wrong. I'm not defending him. But he's got a daughter and she keeps asking when Daddy's coming home and I don't know what to tell her. Regina closed her eyes. Why are you calling me? Because the man who gave me your number said you're the only person who might have mercy. That you'd know what it costs to lose everything. Jennifer Morrison was crying now. Please, I'm not asking you to forgive him. His daughter is 7 years old. She didn't do anything wrong. The apartment felt too small suddenly. Too quiet. What do you want from me? Regina asked. I don't know. A chance? Someone to tell that man, Mr. Prieto, that Travis has people who need him? That maybe 6 months could be 3 months? I know it's not fair to ask, but I have nowhere else to go. Regina should have hung up. Should have said this wasn't her problem, wasn't her responsibility, that Travis Morrison had made his choices and earned his consequences. Instead, she heard herself say, I'll think about it. Thank you. God, thank you. I said I'll think about it. That's all I'm promising. She ended the call and sat in silence, staring at nothing. A 7-year-old girl who missed her father. A sister desperate enough to call a stranger. Consequences that rippled outward like stones thrown in water, touching people who'd done nothing wrong except love someone who had. Regina had wanted justice. She'd gotten it. 3 men punished for their cruelty, their violence, their assumption that some people didn't matter. But justice had collateral damage. It always did. Monday morning came cold and gray. Regina dressed carefully, not the diner uniform she'd worn for months, but clothes that said professional without trying too hard. Pressed pants, clean shirt, the leather jacket she'd bought years ago and rarely wore because it reminded her of who she used to be. The address led her to a building downtown, 10 stories of glass and steel with Prieto Property Management etched discreetly beside the entrance. The lobby was modern, efficient, smelling faintly of expensive cleaning products and fresh coffee. The receptionist expected her. "Miss Lynch, 9th floor. Mr. Prieto is waiting." The elevator was smooth, silent. Regina watched the numbers climb and tried to steady her breathing. This was legitimate, professional, just a job. The 9th floor opened into offices that looked like any corporate space cubicles, conference rooms, people moving with purposeful efficiency. Nothing sinister, nothing dark. Andres Prieto's office was in the corner, windows overlooking the city. He stood when she entered, that same careful courtesy. "Miss Lynch, welcome. Thank you for the opportunity," Regina said, the words formal and strange in her mouth. "Come, let me show you your workspace." He led her down the hall to a smaller office, with a desk, computer, filing cabinets, everything she needed, nothing excessive. "You'll spend the first week reviewing our properties, learning our systems. After that, you'll start site assessments." Questions? Regina had 1,000 questions. She asked the one that mattered. "The men from the alley. Did you arrange for Travis Morrison's sister to call me?" Andres's expression didn't change. "I gave her a number. What she did with it was her choice." "Why?" "Because consequences matter, but so does understanding who they affect." He moved to the window, looking out at the city. "Travis Morrison is paying for what he did, but his daughter doesn't deserve to lose a father for 6 months if 3 would teach the same lesson." "So you're asking me to what? Forgive him?" "I'm asking if you think punishment serves justice or just revenge." Andres turned to face her. "He's not asking for forgiveness. He's asking for mercy. There's a difference." Regina felt the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders like snow. Heavy, cold, real. "I need to think about it." "Of course." Andres headed toward the door, paused. "Miss Lynch? Whatever you decide, there's no wrong answer. Mercy isn't weakness, but neither is holding people accountable for their actions." He left her alone in her new office, surrounded by the trappings of legitimacy and the impossible weight of other people's lives. Regina sat at her desk, opened her computer, and tried to focus on work, but Jennifer Morrison's voice echoed in her head. "She keeps asking when Daddy's coming home." And underneath it, quieter but just as insistent, the memory of being 7 years old herself, waiting for someone who never came back. Justice and mercy weren't opposites, Regina realized. They were choices that lived in the same space, demanding you decide which mattered more. Regina lasted 4 days before she made the call. 4 days of learning property management systems, reviewing security assessments, pretending she could concentrate while Jennifer Morrison's words circled in her head like birds that wouldn't land. Thursday evening, she stayed late at the office after everyone else had gone home. The building was quiet, just the hum of computers and distant traffic below. She pulled out her phone, stared at Andres's number, and called before doubt could stop her. He answered on the second ring. "Miss Lynch, I want to talk about Travis Morrison. Are you still at the office?" "Yes, I'll be there in 20 minutes. He arrived in 15, still wearing his suit from whatever meeting he'd been in, carrying 2 containers of Thai food like he'd known she'd forget to eat. "You think of everything," Regina said, accepting the container. "I think of what matters." Andres sat across from her, opening his own food. "Tell me what you decided." Regina set down her fork, appetite suddenly gone. "His daughter shouldn't suffer for what he did. That's not justice. That's just creating more victims." "Agreed. But I can't just erase consequences. He hurt me. He tried to destroy me for doing the right thing. If I show mercy now, what message does that send? That you're stronger than he is?" Andres ate calmly, like they were discussing weather instead of someone's fate. "That you can afford to be merciful because you're not afraid of him anymore." "How do you know I'm not afraid?" "Because you're here. Because you took this job. Because you're sitting in this office asking about mercy instead of demanding revenge." He met her eyes. "Fear makes small decisions. Strength makes hard ones." Regina felt something loosen in her chest. 3 months instead of 6. But he has to complete anger management. Has to stay employed. Has to actually show up for his daughter. Done. Just like that. Just like that. Andres pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. I'll have it arranged by tomorrow. The sentence modification will cite good behavior and family circumstances. He'll never know you were involved unless you want him to. I don't. Regina picked up her fork again, surprised to find she was hungry after all. I don't need his gratitude. I just need to know I didn't become like him. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the city lights spreading below them like fallen stars. Can I ask you something? Regina said finally. Always. Why do you care? About any of this? You could have walked past that alley. Could have ignored what happened. You had no reason to get involved. Andres set down his food, considering the question with visible seriousness. When I was 16, I watched 3 men beat my father in an alley behind his restaurant. He'd refused to pay protection money. They wanted to make an example. Regina went still. No one helped. 20 people walked past. Some watched. Most looked away. All of them decided it wasn't their problem. His voice remained steady, but something haunted moved behind his eyes. My father survived, but I learned something that night about what it costs to look away. About how evil doesn't need grand plans, it just needs good people to decide someone else's pain isn't worth the inconvenience. I'm sorry. Don't be. It taught me who I wanted to be. Andres looked at her directly. When I saw you in that alley standing up even after they'd thrown you down, I saw someone making the choice everyone else refused to make, and I decided that person was worth protecting. Regina felt tears burning behind her eyes. She blinked them back. I wasn't brave. I was scared the whole time. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. He stood, gathering the empty containers. You did something hard tonight, Miss Lynch. You chose mercy when you had every right to choose otherwise. That's not weakness. That's evolution. After he left, Regina sat alone in her office, watching the city breathe below her. Somewhere out there, a 7-year-old girl would get her father back sooner than expected. Somewhere, Travis Morrison would get a second chance he didn't deserve but might learn from. And here, in this office, Regina Lynch was learning that strength wasn't about how hard you could hit back. It was about choosing when not to. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jennifer Morrison. I don't know what you did, but they're saying he might be home by spring. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Regina didn't respond. She didn't need to. She powered down her computer, locked the office, and walked out into the night, feeling lighter than she had in years. The boy from the street was safe. The men who'd hurt her were learning consequences. And she, Regina Lynch, former military police, current waitress, future security consultant, had discovered something she'd thought she'd lost forever. The belief that her choices mattered. That one person standing up could change the trajectory of someone else's life. That sometimes the bravest thing wasn't throwing the punch. It was choosing mercy instead. Regina's first official site assessment was a restaurant in the South District. Family-owned, struggling, the kind of place where the owner worked the register while his wife cooked in back and their teenage son bussed tables after school. The owner, Mr. Smith, showed her around nervously. Mr. Prieto said you'd help us with security. We had a break-in last month. They took the register, smashed the window. My wife doesn't feel safe anymore. Regina walked the perimeter, noting the broken lock on the back door, the lack of lighting in the alley, the camera system that was 10 years old and mostly decorative. All fixable, all preventable. You need better locks, she said, making notes. Motion sensor lights in the alley, new cameras with cloud backup. And this window, she tapped the glass by the register, needs security film. Won't stop someone determined, but it'll slow them down enough that they'll choose an easier target. Mr. Smith nodded rapidly, writing everything down. How much will this cost? Regina consulted her tablet, running numbers. About $3,000 for everything. But Mr. Prieto has a fund for small business security upgrades. I can have it approved by tomorrow. Why would he do that? Because he remembers what it's like to watch your family's business get hurt and feel powerless to stop it. Mr. Smith's eyes went damp. Thank you. Tell him thank you. Tell him yourself when you see him. Regina handed him her card. Call me if anything else happens. Day or night. That's my direct number. She visited 4 more properties that day. An office building, an apartment complex, a warehouse, a coffee shop. Each one needed something different. Each one she could actually help. By the time she returned to the office, Regina realized she hadn't thought about the alley once, hadn't felt the phantom sensation of falling, hadn't checked over her shoulder for gray hoodies. She was healing, not by forgetting, but by building something new on top of the old foundation. Andres was waiting in her office when she arrived, sitting in the chair across from her desk like he had every right to be there. "How was your first day in the field?" he asked. "Good. Productive." Regina set down her bag, feeling the pleasant exhaustion of work that mattered. "Mr. Smith sends his thanks. He's a good man, deserves better than he's gotten." "Most people do." Regina sat, studying Andres with new understanding. "This job, it's not really about security, is it? It's about exactly what I told you. Assessing vulnerabilities, preventing problems, but also about giving people like Mr. Smith a chance, about putting someone with military training and a protective instinct in a position to actually help people, instead of just serving them coffee." Andres smiled. "Maybe it's about both. You could have hired anyone. But I hired you." He stood, moved toward the door. "Same reason you helped that boy. Same reason you chose mercy for Travis Morrison. Because some people are wired to stand between the strong and the weak, and the world needs more of those people in positions where they can actually make a difference." "Is that what you do?" Regina asked. "Stand between people?" "In my own way, yes. Even when it costs you? Especially then." Andres paused in the doorway. "Miss Lynch, I'm proud of the work you did today, and prouder of the choice you made last night. Keep being that person." After he left, Regina opened her laptop to write up her assessments. But first, she pulled up a search engine and typed Andres Prieto background. The results were exactly what she expected: business owner, philanthropist, property management mogul. Nothing criminal, nothing dark. But underneath the legitimate businesses and charitable donations, Regina saw the pattern: youth programs in dangerous neighborhoods, security upgrades for struggling businesses, legal defense funds for people who couldn't afford lawyers. Andres Prieto had built an empire, but he'd built it protecting people, just like he'd protected her. Regina closed the laptop and looked out at the city again. The same city where a teenage boy was safe now, where a 7-year-old girl would see her father again, where a waitress who'd thought her best days were behind her had found purpose again. She thought about the men who'd thrown her in the garbage, about how they'd expected her to break, expected her to disappear into silence and shame like so many others had before her. They'd been wrong. Not because she was special, but because she'd made a choice, the same choice countless people made every day when they decided someone else's fear mattered more than their own safety. Andres had called it courage. Regina wasn't sure. She just knew that when she'd seen that boy cornered, she'd moved without thinking. And everything that followed, the violence, the consequences, the mercy, the job had grown from that single moment of deciding to care. Her phone buzzed. Another text from the unknown number that was no longer unknown. "Dinner Friday?" Not business. Just two people who've learned that standing up costs something, but staying silent costs more. Regina smiled, typing back, "Where?" "Surprise. I'll pick you up at 7. She set down her phone, gathered her things, and headed home. The same 6 blocks she'd walked for months, but different now. Not a trudge toward oblivion, but a path forward. As she walked, Regina passed an alley. Not the same one, but similar. Dark, narrow, smelling of garbage and shadows. She didn't flinch, didn't look away, just kept walking. Because some acts didn't require witnesses to matter. Some choices changed you from the inside out. And sometimes the strongest thing you could do wasn't learning how to fight. It was learning when to fight, when to show mercy, and when to walk forward into the person you'd been trying to become all along. Regina Lynch had died in that alley. The woman who'd climbed out of the garbage was someone new, someone stronger, someone who'd discovered that courage wasn't given, it was chosen. Every single day. In moments big and small. And she'd keep choosing it. Tomorrow. Next week. For however long it took to build a life that honored the boy she'd saved and the woman she'd become. One choice at a time. One person protected at a time. One act of courage that didn't ask for permission or applause, just quietly insisted that some things mattered more than safety. That some people were worth the cost. That standing between fear and violence wasn't heroism. It was simply being human in a world that too often forgot what that meant. Thanks for staying with this story right till the final moment. You're the reason these stories come alive. If you're ready for another powerful journey, just tap the next video on your screen. And before you go, leave a quick comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I'm excited to see your thoughts and connect with you down there.
Мораль. Когда ты заходишь в интернет и видишь, как люди там в Дубае летают, покупают себе огромное количество автомобилей какие-то, Ну, много всего такого, что ты за эту зарплату себе никогда в жизни позволить не сможешь. И как человеку оставаться морально типа сильным? Что ему нужно делать? Ну, наверное, во-первых, это, наверное, все от семьи исходит, да? То есть, какая семья у тебя, как она построена. Если ты один живешь, это сложно, да, ты будешь сам себя, но у тебя, опять-таки, возможно, ну, родители, если есть, которые друзья поддержат тебя в какой-то момент, хотя бы просто отвлекут тебя от этих мыслей. А если у тебя, к примеру, там, семья, жена, к примеру, да, есть дети, то тут, наверное, поддержка только от них исходит какая-то. Вот, чтобы не упиваться в своих мыслях о том, что какая нынче сложная жизнь. И, наверное, других-то вариантов, в принципе-то, и нету. Какие вот еще варианты, в принципе, изменить, поменять свою жизнь настолько, чтобы она была, ну, казалась тебе удачной, да, реализованным себя в жизни, в чем-то. В чем, вот как проявляется на самом деле у нас реализованность? Наверное, у 90% случаев это финансовое благополучие, финансовая независимость. Это, наверное, одно из таких ключевых моментов, когда человек, наверное, считает себя реализованным, да, в этой жизни. То есть, как добиться этого? То есть, с учетом того, что даже возьмем нашу страну, да, сколько миллионов людей здесь живет, как каждому добиться этого результата? Непонятно. И с каждым годом просто ситуация становится все хуже и хуже. Все дорожает, люди зарабатывают либо столько же. Ну, даже если они зарабатывают столько же, на самом деле этого все уже недостаточно. К чему это все приведет на самом деле? В оконцове, наверное, мир погрязнет в большую депрессию в какую-то. Какие-то войны, возможно, или еще что-то еще больше глобальных таких вещей, которые не приведут ни к чему хорошему на самом деле. Поддержка каждого человека именно для того, чтобы он держался, наверное, морально, заключается в том, что, ну, наверное, дом, в который ты приходишь, должен быть крепостью твоей, да, что это единственное должно быть место, где ты будешь чувствовать себя под защитой. Для этого было и придумано, наверное, своя пещера изначально, потом свои какие-то чумы, палатки различные, да, потом все это превратилось, на данный момент это у нас дома, квартиры, в которые мы приходим и должны ощущать себя в безопасности, чтобы можно быть немного морально расслабленным с учетом того, что ты выходишь каждый день на работу, на улицу, и все равно давление вот это вот, оно все равно присутствует. Когда ты заходишь в магазин, видишь цены эти, да, и так далее, не можешь себе что-то там приобрести, позволить на ежедневной основе, это откладывает большой, наверное, отпечаток. Не, наверное, а точно. И поэтому, когда возвращаясь домой, ты чувствуешь, вот хотя бы есть типа уголок того места, куда ты можешь прийти. Уголок на самом деле человеку много тоже не надо. Можно хотеть большего, но на самом деле человеку одному много не надо. Да? Ему нужно спальное место, спокойное место, где можно подумать. Ну, это когда ты один, к примеру, да? Когда у тебя есть семья, к примеру, ты приходишь домой, опять-таки, тут хотя бы, да, поговорить о каких-то вещах. Просто об отрешенных вещах, наверное. И, возможно, при этих же условиях у тебя и появляется какая-то дополнительная мотивация. Дополнительная мотивация для реализации себя. А когда у тебя нету ничего, вот это уже становится проблемой. И это у многих на самом деле. Что значит не иметь ничего? Тут, наверное, самое главное, дизмораль у человека еще возникает при том, что это уже, наверное, где-то в глубине души даже она возникает при даже хорошей финансовой подушке такой, которая у тебя есть, хороших финансовых деньгах, да, то есть, но нету вот внутреннего ощущения, к примеру, дружбы, семьи, любви и так далее. Это уже отдельно на самом деле разговор, потому что мы, вот, к примеру, можем взять, как сейчас вот Мелстрой, если кто-то смотрит, насколько тяжело обладать такими финансами и не иметь, по сути, ничего. Ни друзей, ничего не иметь. Так главное это получается для бедных главное деньги, для богатых главное какое-то внутреннее ощущение нужности, не из-за денег. Вот такой вот. И это борьба какая-то такая и вот эти два слоя общества, богатые и бедные, они друг друга не понимают. На самом деле из-за этого, возможно. Потому что богатый человек, он уже не смотрит на деньги, он не считает эти деньги. Ему важно внутреннее вот это вот ощущение того, что он нужен без них даже. Это как Тони Старку сказали: а кто ты без костюма? На вот это я филантроп, тудым-сюдым, он сказал, да? Так и человеку, у которого много денег, ты задашь вопрос: а кто ты без денег? Ну, что ты представляешь себе без денег? Вот и это, наверное, возможно, таких людей богатых, как вот, например, там Мелстрой, задав ему этот вопрос: а кто ты без денег? Он на него ответить-то и не сможет. Обратная сторона людей бедных, да, вот если мы посмотрим, человеку